How do we register?
Yeah, I think registration is quite simple. We've got two types of registration. You either register as an individual, and you can either register, and then we register your firm. So if you register the firm, we need certain documentation, which is the application form. And then for now, we then require a tax clearance, a BE certificate. We require the CIPC documents. We also require that you also have a letter of appointment of your auditor, as well as a letter in which shows that you've opened a trust account in terms of Section 54. And then if it's an individual registration, where you then register under a firm, we only need a letter from your employer confirming your employment. We need a completed application form and a certified copy of your ID. And if the firm is compliant in all respects, and then we register you.
So the question that I have is, there's a blanket exemption clause in the Act. Now, one of the recent questions that came up, and it came through Facebook, is I'm exempt from having a trust account because I form part of, I don't receive more than 2 million rand, I don't have a trust account, I don't receive any trust monies, so I am exempt from registration. Are you exempt from any form of registration?
Definitely not.
Absolutely not. If you read the exemption carefully, you will note that what you are exempted from is having a trust account, but only under certain limited circumstances. And there is contained in the regulations an affidavit which you have to complete and submit, which allows that provision of the Act to operate. And what you have to do then is to be able to make that affidavit, send it to our audit department and say, I don't have a trust account, I do not receive trust monies, I have never received trust monies, or if I did, I had a trust account which I have now closed and wound up properly in respect of whatever requirements there were for such winding up. I undertake not to accept trust monies in the future. And if it should happen that I need to accept any trust money, I will give you 60 days notice. I will open a trust account and I will advise you of that trust account. As a managing agent, I am exempted from having a trust account if I can show that any monies belonging to my client remain in the body corporate or home ownership association's account. So I don't hold those monies myself in a trust account. And if you satisfy the audit department that that is the case, and you can provide by way of an affidavit confirmation that that money remains with the body corporate, and you'll remember that in terms of the regulations, the body corporate has to have its own account specifically opened in terms of the Sectional Title Management Schemes Act. And you need to be able to show us that there is such an account. And the audit department, once it's satisfied that those facts apply, you will be automatically exempted. You don't need to go before an exemption committee or to apply in any way. You simply need to satisfy us that the exemption applies.
So this is the concern, and just on that thought. So on the exemption, if you read Regulation 2, it says you're exempt from having a trust account if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Is that an automatic exemption where I, as a managing agency, read it and I say, well, I don't receive trust money, so I am exempt?
Okay. No, that's not the case at all, because if you look at the Act, and remember that the regulations are subordinate legislation, your Act is what empowers, your regulations say how they have to happen. The Act says that if you're a property practitioner, you have to have a trust account. Okay, which means that the regulation says, fine, you can be exempt from that requirement in the following circumstances. So you have to satisfy us that you are in fact exempted, and in fact we need to make that provision in our systems for you, because otherwise what's going to happen is, at the end of the day, if you haven't told us that this exemption applies to you, and you haven't given us the confirmation to show that, we're going to require an audit report from you of your trust account. And when you don't give us one, we are going to disqualify you from certain things in terms of the Act, and we're going to impose penalties. And of course, then it's a rigmarole for everybody to try and establish what the correct position is.
It seems like there's a ripple effect. Because now I assume I don't have to have a trust account. There's this automatic exemption. So I carry on business as usual. I don't inform you. I try to apply for my Fidelity Fund certificate. Will I get it?
No, you won't, because we're going to say to you, please give us
Comply.
your trust account. We want your trust account details, and we want the letter from your bank confirming that you hold this trust account and that it's registered as a Section 54(1) trust account. And without that, you're not going to be registered.
So on that point, upon my understanding, is a property practitioner who performs these functions and duties must hold a Fidelity Fund certificate. That's the blanket definition as I see it.
Yeah.
So am I correct in stating every property practitioner must have a trust account? Must have a Fidelity Fund certificate?
Yes.
That's
without
correct.
exception.
And in fact, if you don't hold a trust account, if you don't hold a Fidelity Fund certificate, that is an offense under the Act. You can be disciplined, and worse now, the conveyancers are obliged not to pay you that commission, and in fact to pay it over to the PPRA, and it's then paid over to the Fidelity Fund. And just to confirm to you, we have started receiving that money from conveyancing attorneys. And we are also in communication with the Law Society, and we are signing an MOU with them so that they can also assist us in ensuring that this is adhered to.
So, if I may, what is the requirements for me to hold a Fidelity Fund certificate with the PPRA?
I think it's for you is to register. As stated before, there's two types of registration. It's either you register as a firm or an individual. And if your documents, as stated before, are compliant and there's nothing wrong with the firm, then you will be registered. We just need the applicable fees, the documents that are required, which is your letter of employment and certified copy of your ID if you're an individual. And then if you're a firm, we require also an application form, the application fee, your CIPC docs, a tax clearance, and now we require also your BE certificate. We require you to appoint an auditor and a letter from your auditor, as well as the opening of the trust account in terms of Section 54, which will be confirmed by the bank through a letter.
So my concern with the thing is, for me to have a Fidelity Fund certificate, there's certain, and upon my reading of the Act, educational requirements.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
We are dealing with managing agents here.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with estate agents. Sorry that I only introduced this question now, but I had to hold your attention. But this is a big thing, and this is the thing that I get from the industry. It's this piece of legislation designed for estate agents.
Yes.
But now, managing agents got shot in the crossfire. Now we're part of this, but there's nothing for the industry. But there's all these requirements. So on that educational point, and I want to unpack that.
Yeah. I think remember what the Act says in introducing just the new role players, is that the PPRA must then consult with each industry bodies so that they can set up new educational standards, educational requirements, as well as your PDE exams that have to be written. So currently, there is nothing that managing agents are supposed to be doing. We do have qualification requirements for estate agents, however, not for managing agents. And we are currently, Nama can confirm it, in conversations with them where we are engaging on this process so that we can come up with specific educational requirements for managing agents, because that's what the Act says. It must be specific to the particular industry. And for now, even if we register managing agents, we will exempt them from the educational requirements until we will have finalized this process. So managing agents don't need to worry about the educational requirements. We are going to finalize them through your association NAMA, and then we will have ones that are specific to your industry.
And that's the question, and I think this is a concern for the industry, especially this industry. There is this piece of legislation that came in. Everybody knew a state agent, it needs regulation. There was a previous act, the PPRA came out and regulated it more. But for me, as an attorney, I can also see that it's a piece of legislation designed. It seems like it's designed for estate agents, but let's include everybody. Now we're sitting here. The one thing is there's this educational requirement, which is not being publicized. We don't know, but the expectation is to register. So from an industry, people don't want to register because of that lack. And I want to touch on the exemption again. And I don't know whether you want to, Deborah, whether
Yes.
you want to comment on this.
Certainly. First of all, I think as far as the education side is concerned, we must remember that the regulations specifically require us to have a specific PDE exam, which is your board exam or your professional designation exam, and to have a candidacy program for each separate entity. So we can't lump you with the estate agents and make you do some kind of estate agency course or some kind of NQF in real estate. That's not required, okay? And because of the fact that at this stage, bearing in mind that the Act only came in the beginning of February, we don't have an education program for each and every industry. Bear in mind also we're required, first of all, to consult with you and together to come up with what those requirements are, which we're in the process of doing. But because we don't have that yet, all we simply do is we exercise Section 4. Now, Section 4 is a very valuable little section in the Act because it allows us to exempt any property practitioner from any provision of the Act. And so what we do is we use the Form E1, which is the form in the regulations, you will have seen it, and you apply for an exemption from the education requirements or from whatever it is that you require an exemption from, that you cannot comply with at this stage. Now, what we're doing is we're actually saying to you, register with us and we will exempt you from a PDE exam and from the candidacy for a period of X until such time as we're in a position not only to say this is what you need to do, but also to give you time to do it. And that's how we're approaching it. Sorry?
You've mentioned this form, the E1 form, the exemption
Yes,
form.
that's right.
So it's quite clear that there's some, not loopholes, but there's some lacking from the regulator pertaining to educational requirements. So there's this form. Can we, and I'm just throwing it out there, can we have a pre-populated form for the industry so that we can provide our members with same and say, register, fill in this form, it's already filled in, this is how you require it, because you haven't as of yet looked at me as the industry.
Yes.
Can we have such a form?
Absolutely. There are two types of form. First of all, at the moment, we do have pre-populated forms that we have pre-populated for non-estate agents who we want to register with us, but which our system doesn't yet allow us to register. And all that does is it says, please fill in this form, and we've pre-populated it with, you're applying for an exemption from Section 47 and Section 48, which is the section that requires you to have a Fidelity Fund certificate to operate. So you're now allowed to operate without a Fidelity Fund certificate for a limited period. At the moment, it's up until the end of December, when we hope to be in a position to register everybody. Okay. Now, that is separate from your education requirements. So when we get to this position where we can now register you, we will then say to you, fine, you now need to submit an E1 form saying what education requirements you want an exemption from. And if you as a group would like to pre-populate that and assist them and say, okay, this is what the PPRA have said you require as an estate agent, as a standard of training, we are in the process of doing that or getting that, please give us an exemption for a year or 2 years or however long it's going to take. Bearing in mind that the maximum that the Act allows us to exempt you for is 3 years.
That's very